Our speakers for this session are Mr. Rakesh Khanna, Sayoni Basu, Pratik Thomas, and Anuradha Sen Gupta. Rakesh Khanna is one of the co-founders of Blaft Publications, a small publishing house based in Chennai. He is the editor of Blaft Anthology of Tamil Pulp Fiction, Volume 1 and Volume 2, and co-editor with Rashmi Ruth Devadasan of Comic Street Art Anthology, the Obituary Journal. Sayoni Basu has worked at OUP, Penguin, Scholastic, and Amarth Chitrakatha. She is currently director and primary platypus at Duckbill, a publishing house for children and young adults. Pratik Thomas founded Manta Ray in 2009, an indie storytelling and publishing house that focuses primarily on comic books and graphic novels for mature readers. Anuradha Sen Gupta is the author of a couple of children's books, a graphic guidebook on environmental matters, and a handful of stories and anthologies. He has a leading initiative called Graphics Book Tour, which aims to build a community of readers and practitioners of this captivating literary form. Speakers.
Thanks, Sean. Hi everyone. I hope the comics will be a good way to get your early morning going in Goa. I'm sure you were up late on the beach, maybe. Anyway. Hopefully you'll get enough of that tonight. Okay, so the thing is, one thing that I suppose all the four of us share is the idea that if you're going to tell a story, why not use both words and pictures? And Pratik's essentially taken that line. This session will largely make it around Pratik, and then the three of us will step in as and when we have something to say about what we're talking about. So let's talk about Pratik. I mean, you've got a basic introduction. Pratik has worked on, the Manta Ray comics. Their first title was Hush, which came out a couple of years, 3 years ago. And it's quite an interesting, almost path-breaking publication. And before we really dig into Pratik, let's first get Rakesh and Sayoni to just tell us a little about their involvement with graphic books, because Pratik will take in a little more depth. All right? Rakesh, would you do that?
Sure. Yeah. So our publishing company started in 2008, and we're kind of into translations of pulp fiction and graphic novels. So we've done some translations of comics from Tamil pulp fiction, and we've done a graphic novel originally written in English called Moonward by George Martin, and we brought out a collection of short comics and graphic art called The Obituary Journal, and we brought out a translation of a Japanese manga, so a non-fiction manga about a manga artist's trip to Delhi. So they're all four very different books, and they had very different approaches to them and deals with the artists. And the translated ones obviously were already done, and we didn't have to develop the thing. Other ones we did work with the artist on changing things. And, so they were all done differently. A variety of experience.
Great, Rakesh, thanks. Sayoni?
I had brushed past graphic novels here and there. When I used to work at Scholastic, and my first experience of publishing was actually a licensing Jeff Smith's Spoon series, which we published because we absolutely loved the books and we thought it's just going to bomb in. And they were reasonably expensive by Scholastic standards, and we were thrilled because they just sold, well, we didn't sell and sell and sell, but we certainly went into reprints. And eventually we were emboldened to commission an Indian graphic novel, which wasn't supposed to be a graphic novel. It came in as a short story. It was Jerry Pinto's When Crows Are White, which was published a few months back. But the only form in which we felt it worked was as a graphic novel. So the artist Garima Gupta did, I think, a fabulous job, and I hope some of you have seen the books. After that, I began a more intensive but very short introduction with graphic novels when I worked at Amar Chitrakatha, and where the aspiration always was to move to a graphic novel from the comic books that we were doing. Sad to say, none of the projects I began had happened, or I don't think there is.
Yeah, I guess that could be the fate of some graphic novels, and I mean, when someone starts with more comics orientation, I'm not sure where they'll go next. But comics is what Pratik started with, and comics is what he's sticking with. So I guess let's hear from him what your experiences have been so far.
Thank you, Anand. So basically, the first book, Hush, happened before Manta Ray did. I had lost my job in a startup company. I've been working in storytelling for the past 3-4 years, and then recession came and I lost my job. And my brother, who's a filmmaker, he told me this idea he had for a story, and I told him, why don't we just, I'll make a comic out of this, and you can take it to producers and get funding based on as like a comic book. So we did this book called Hush, which is very bold move, I think, because we're dealing with a topic which none of the mainstream media actually talks about, which is child abuse. We decided to do it in complete silence, so there's no words in the entire book. And I think I'd gone to one of these Delhi publishers meet, I was invited there when I was in Delhi, and people were surprised by the fact that we actually priced it very low. I mean, we had no clue about how to price the book. We spent, I think, 80 rupees on printing, and we priced it 195, and I think we basically got slaughtered for that. But we didn't expect to sell the book at all. We just thought we'd do 500 books, but the book actually did very well. In terms, it got good mainstream attention from the press and everything. Okay. So it's in complete silence. So yeah, so we basically, I wrote the script, but it's purely Rajiv Vaid, the artist, who brought out the book in, full glory. There's nothing that I could do but write the script, but he actually got all the emotions correct, he got everything correct. So, and we also did like these 2 fold-out posters in the book. This is by Prabha Malya, who's our art director, and we did another poster with Manoj Menon, who's one of my very good friends. And we put in the book like an add-on to the book. And then we did these kind of posters which, this is use of publicity in Landmark and in small stores. The great thing about the book was that a lot of people were surprised by the fact that we actually took a step and talked about this topic as serious as this, without actually being preachy about it. We tried to use entertainment in some sense. People compared it with Columbine Massacre, but it had nothing to do with that. It was just a school shooting. And people complained about the pricing because if you look at it, it's just a 17-page story, and it's 195, and people compare, okay, 195 rupees, you have 77 rupees, and you're paying so much per page and all of that. Which is, it is fair criticism. I agree, when you're paying so much money for a highly produced book, you can do that. But one of the most rewarding things was that people have told us they've read it 8 times, and not because they didn't get it, but there were so many layers which were built into the story. Like you wouldn't just finish it in one read. You go back and then try and figure out things. And we had this Comic-Con in Bangalore recently, and one couple who had a 3-year-old daughter, the lady came and told me that she loved Hush, but she couldn't sleep for 3 days after reading it because it created, I think, some kind of resonance in people that, you're talking about something like that. And then few NGOs were interested in taking the book as field discussion. Basically, you give the book because it's open to interpretation. There's no language which binds the book So you can show it to anybody, in fact, and they could take it and discuss it amongst the field and find out what people are thinking about it. So after Hush, basically things have been at a standstill. So we brought out Hush in January 2010 and it's 2012 now, and we've not done a serious book after that. We have, but it's not been out. So on the strength of after Hush, I think, yeah, this is, okay, I'm just showing you some of the work we've done. This is, at some point Jimmy Wales came out of this campaign to, basically can support Wikipedia. So we just did this simple fun thing. So we took historic events, and we always work in comics or in illustration. And so basically we just put this up on Facebook, and just to, I don't know, Wikipedia is such a big resource, so why don't we try and help in some way? So we did a series of 3 posters around this. So this is Julius Caesar, and so behind if you look at it, it's got all these Italian things. And this is Lady Godiva, who actually walked naked, went on a horse naked to the streets to challenge her husband who was a king then. So you have all these gym and all the ads around it are around the subject area. And Apple and Isaac Newton and Apple phones and all of that. So on the strength of Hush, what happened was that, yeah, this is something that was commissioned by a magazine called Motherland in Delhi. They're a underground subculture magazine, and they basically were doing an issue on prisons. So they had this idea, we pitched an idea actually of, there's a famous book called Madhudagal by Walsh by Bashir. He's like one of the most famous writers from Malayalam. And we did, I think 80% of the work. The book was beautiful. I mean, it's amazing how Prabha visualized it. But then there were rights issues, and basically I think DC was very unsure of how it would be, and so we had to scrap everything, and then we took up Charles Sograd's story. So again, I wrote the story. I mean, what happened in a small publishing firm, which is like 3 people. There's Dilip, there's myself and Prabha, and Dilip and I are co-founders. And I'm in Bangalore, and I'm the only person in India from Andhra. Dilip is in Dubai, and Prabha is in the US. So when a small team like that comes together, you basically rely on the people inside it to try and at least do a lot of the initial work. I mean, the next couple of slides I show you the kind of work you're doing otherwise. So we did this entire retelling of Charles Sograd's story, and it is actually, and it's now online. So the book came out, and I think a lot of people picked it up, the story, because Prabha, they become fans of Prabha, and like we pushed her so much. And as a publishing house, we try to push the artists, like core artists, we give them like huge pieces so they can get their work noticed. And like right now, people come and ask us, what is new from Prabha? Or, like there's a girl, lady who came to Comic-Con looking for her new book, Wildlings, which is brought by Aleph, and Nilanjan Roy has written it, and Prabha is like amazingly illustrated, but it's not in bookstores. So, but people came to us asking about the book. And
does this book cover Goa arrest?
Sorry?
Does this book cover Goa arrest?
It actually covers the arrest from Tihar jail and how he escaped from Tihar jail. So that's what the story was about. So, okay, anyway. So, after that, we got a big break with Mint. Mint is India's second largest business paper. They're very growing fast. And sorry, these are 2 posters we did for Motherland, basically to promote the book. And we got this huge break from Mint. Sukumar, who's the editor, was a big fan of Hush and the kind of work we do. So, we've been doing for the past 1 year a newspaper column called The Small Picture. It's a full-page comic in the Mint. I think previously only Joe Sack was done in The Guardian. So we've covered, the brief given to us was to actually an artist's take on the world around, what's happening in the world around you. Please go ahead.
Do you have some stuff from me?
Yeah. So this is on the poverty line, basically. So this is one of the most famous, popular pieces. This is about Kapil Sibal and his two-faced nature about, everything. You would say something and then they say something else. This is about the murder of T.P. Chandrasekhar in Kerala. This is the first time we're using color so extensively. This is about the Higgs boson God particle, and this is one of the most recent ones. It's got a lot of appreciation. It's the only color one. And this is the latest one. We were talking about the Muslim, how we tend to see a bearded Muslim as a conservative guy. The second last piece in this entire presentation is about 12. It's the next series we're doing. It's a collection of 12 stories. It's talking about young people in India, but we're also trying to bring a little political talk into it. Like we're doing like this story called How It Ends is based on the Maoist conflict. We're looking at the conflict between, at the individual level, between a soldier and a Maoist rebel. And we also want to talk about Yvonne Sharmila and her struggle. This is the second book that we released. It's only in conventions and books, but not in bookstores. Yeah, and these are previews from 12, one-page previews from 12. So we're talking about choice. Like a lot of youngsters, and every youngster, I think you have a coming of age, and then you reach a point in your life where you have to make a choice about the kind of things you do. Like this is from the Mao's story. It's a little on the art side, and we're also doing like a love story, but which has again choice built into the character actions. It's very character driven more than event or The final thing is called Mixtape. It's actually an anthology grassroots project we're trying to do. It's basically the idea is to just take very small run, low quality print and put it out in cafes in Bangalore and send it out to friends and basically get the comic as soon as possible into people's hands. And yeah, that's what we do.
That was really great. Pratik, you've taken a decision to go the comics route for all your work. What are the kicks you get out of that, and what are the specific challenges of doing something like that as a publisher, as a small publisher?
The kicks is, I think, working with all these people. I mean, there's Oindri in London, Hemant in Seattle. Arjun, who's the main collaborator on Small Picture, is working with Facebook. So we work with these diverse creators, and that is big because Hemant works in an ad agency and Oindri works in theatre, and they bring these influences into comics. And I've been a comic reader all my life. And the very idea of starting my career was that I'm honestly and personally tired of seeing mythology being rehashed in so many different ways, on TV, on comics, on books, and why don't you just get past that and do original stories? And I'm actually quite vocal about it. And but the challenge there is that people still, I think, prefer flying cavemen and a mythology character dressed in armor and fighting demons again, which is cool if you can do it really well, which you don't. So the challenge, I mean, one of the biggest challenges, I think, for Hush we got a big break because as a distributor we had West End, we had a lot of good press about it. And I was talking to one of the participants here who's actually a very respected figure in the industry, and he was telling me he's not bullish about comics, which I understand. But I think we can change that because I think the content we're doing is very different. We're not going to be mass anytime soon, and which is fine, but I think we're a very core, strong audience. But the biggest challenge is, I think, within the system that we have, with 3 people seeing 3 parts of the world, and I'm doing, actually I'm writing 12, and I'm also editing some of these other stories, and I'm also managing admin, and I'm actually going out and paying checks to the creators, going to the bank, and so it's one-man chai, I'm the chaiwala, I'm everything. So it's basically, it takes a ton productivity, because 12 was announced a year back, and we're not still out with it, so which we intend to change the next few months. We're actually aggressively going to bring out 3 new titles. So that is the challenge, I think. The biggest challenge is not putting out enough work, because people want to see the work we do.
Rakesh, you've, your company has done both regular text stuff as well as comics, graphic books, graphic novels. How do you, how do these two things pan out for you? Is it much more difficult to bring out a graphic novel? Is it much the same?
I guess, like I was saying, like the books we've done have all been really, really different from each other. So, like the translated ones, we don't have to do a lot of extra work. Although, I mean, we do. I mean, doing a translation of a Japanese manga means a lot of Photoshop work and taking out the Japanese and putting in the English and making sure it's like, it's not easy. Doing that book was really different than working with George Martin on Moonward, which is like an original story, I think, more along the lines of what Pratik's doing. But, I totally agree with him about it's kind of time to get beyond the mythology adaptations and bring out more original stuff. I mean, like, I've sort of been learning a lot more about Japanese art and culture recently, and it's amazing. It's like they're coming out with a new epic every month. You know, it's like there's, you know, the productivity of manga in Japan is just incredible, and the movie scene. So I think, you know, it'll be nice if we can tap that energy a little bit in India. And it seems like it's starting to happen in a cool way. So, yeah, I don't know. I think it's different with every artist. I think it's really hard to generalize about it for me.
Okay. All right. Shani, specifically with your experience with, say, the Jerry Pinto book, because see, Bone is a little different. Bone comes to you probably in a certain format or whatever which you can work with. But with the Jerry Pinto book, it's something that you produce as an original piece of work. So, given what happened, I mean, given the work you've done in Scholastic before that, how different was this?
Completely different. We knew how to do picture books, but because it was a graphic novel, we kind of had very little idea of how to set about doing it. And also, if you've seen the book, it kind of isn't in a very regular format. So it was a lot of it was what we were kind of very happy to go with what Gariban wanted to do. There were points at which we said, look, practically, in terms of size, in terms of when the page layout started coming, that some of it was moving too close to back to the picture book. This was essentially completely, we wanted it to be a graphic novel, so it's kind of, you know, there are bits where you're like, what is it really? Yeah, so I think we've never visually edited so intensively, and clearly that's not something that we're very used to doing. So that was difficult. And also because we're not quite, you know, it's one of those stories which is equally for children and adults. So again, visually the book had to look that way.
It's interesting that in India, I mean, many of the mainstream publishers are picking up graphic novels to do. I mean, Penguin's done one, HarperCollins has done a couple at least. Hachette is doing something. Why do you think that is? I mean, in the West, as far as I know, it's just niche, specialized publishers that really take on graphic novels, and they usually are people who actually just do graphic novels.
But because in India we're all small cottage industries or large cottage industries in Indonesia. So, you know, we all dabble in a little bit of this and a little bit of that. And also because graphic novels, I think, for all publishers is a new form. So it's very exciting, you know, almost as exciting as it is to do digital books. Because again, there you're exploring an area which you're not familiar with and you're learning the rules. So similarly with graphic novels, there's the fun of a completely new format.
I would maybe disagree a little bit on it being a very niche thing in the West. I mean, I think what's different is that you have dedicated publishers, like there's Fantagraphics and Browning Quarterly and DC, and dedicated stores also. I mean, it's really common in American cities to have a bookstore which has only comics, they don't have textbooks. I've not seen that in India yet. And I hope that happens. I think that would be cool.
There's a comics cafe in Bombay now called Legion University, which is very, very good.
They're more of a library than,
Yeah.
they're more, and it's about a brilliant effort, but they just kind of establish what they're doing there.
But do you think there is a need for or potential for a specialized channel for graphic books?
In terms of retail,
Yeah, distribution, retail, whatever.
it wouldn't be economically viable, I'm quite sure.
At some point of time?
See, the thing is, I've been realizing this, I think this is since last Sunday when we had the Comic-Con and discussions here. We as a publisher and all graphic novel publishers or all comic publishers in India today are targeting readers saying that comics is not for kids, it's for mature readers. Okay, and I personally have been like stuck on that thing. But we had a plan to, I love children's books. books. I buy children's books, like Katha and Tulika and like I didn't know over the rumor, but you know, like stuff like that. But I collect picture books, so we've been thinking, okay, we will get into children's books at some time. But what I've noticed is that we all stuck up in this thing that is for mature readers, and we're targeting people at our age group. If you look at the entire crop of graphic novel publishers in India, comic publishers in India, except Rakesh and the big publishers, small guys, everyone is my age. We're 30, we're from like 28 to 35, and we all grew up on DC, Marvel comics, and we want to do that in India. And we are all trying to sell it to again our generation, which is, you know, okay, we know about comics, and we're saying, okay, comics is for us. We are not realizing the fact that this entire young India growing up without having any introduction to comics, except Bone, which is a brilliant book, but yeah, I mean, they don't know about comics otherwise. And so when, okay, let's say 10 years on and if matter is still there, who's going to read our books? Who am I going to bring out books? So I think there is, I mean, if you actually start reaching out to young readers, then in 10 years time you'll probably have a healthy population which can say, okay, it makes comic detailing viable. But otherwise I think we're going to be quite small.
So why do you say there's no children's comic content? The same stuff, the DC Marvel is still there, much bigger.
No, but yeah, so they're reading Batman and Superman. And, I mean, but why not Indian? I'm saying stories written by, it doesn't have to be like India. I'm just saying tell original stories from India which can bring children, you know, into comics.
No, but the same thing that you said, we grew up on a diet of.
No, I'm not a big fan of Tinkle in that sense. It's shorter comics.
Chota Bheem comics are selling big.
But have you seen Chota Bheem?
The editing is so bad, it drives me insane.
Yeah, no. I mean, not
What's
Chota
around the
Bheem.
stories, which is a small problem. Around the stories.
Okay. Sadiq, I ask you something. What is the experience of in your store of comics and versus books? I mean, is there something that's interesting in that?
Say something that Pratik is not right at all. How much it is our age?
No, Amritsar, I know my entire mythology from Amritsar. And but why not do something
Exactly.
new?
No, but
They're doing stories on, sorry, that's why I didn't tell this story.
They're trying.
Yeah, I mean, they're doing entire entrepreneurial series like
And I think some of the new, because see, there's a constant battle between editorial and sales and marketing and those with the money bags who want more Ram, more Bhim, more Sita, not too much Sita. but they're doing new stuff.
I mean, Brainwave is a brilliant effort, I think.
Yeah.
don't say words.
It's not awesome. They say was
And I mean, one of the things which is that at Amritsar Jakarta, they're consciously trying to, because the illustrations always were in a certain style, and they're trying to transition to something more contemporary, but again, there is a constant conflict, because, you know, the sales guys will come back and say but this doesn't look like Amritsar Jakarta. So there's this process of conversation with the sales guys saying, look,
You know, but actually, see, ever since at least YouTube Group came in, right? And I don't know when ACK came in how much money they had. YouTube Group was immense money. And I think at one point I was reading that Kishore Biyani wanted to start an amusement parks in India based on the Amritsar character. That's the entire reason of taking, because there's so much potential there. And you've got so much money with you. And how much effort does it take to actually change this generation? You say the same Ram story, I think say Ram story, but imagine like they're doing Tirupati story, it's a completely new illustration style that they've used. But you know, you have that push, and you can actually, and this is your future market again, if you want to get into comics seriously. You can actually drive an entire nation there, because you're reaching out to parents who read Amritsar Jakarta and they will buy your comic, but give them new content like Brainwave, which I think is like, I'm saying, it's a brilliant effort. And Thomas Campbell is really good in it. But when you have, like, so for me, I'm, like, or Rakesh, it's small people putting our own money, and you're like, okay, whatever little that we can do, we can do. But they have the power to evangelize an entire generation.
but if you open a new big bazaar, you'll earn a lot more money than if you invest in a much Jakarta. So,
But there is the entire property, right? It's a brand. Like you guys talking about young leaders in the brand.
I left.
No, sorry. No, I'm talking about you guys. I think yesterday in your panel, you're talking about the brand building a series out of it. So there is potential like sort of big brands. And you're bringing out, and Amritsar is bringing out animation series. So there is a brand there. It's table
I
language.
know, but it's also a brand where it, which is very conscious of its heritage nature. So even with Tinkle, where you know the people who run Tinkle now are all young things, some very very young things, and they want to do things differently. But again, there is a constant feedback from the sales team saying, "But this looks different," and you know to my eye, it just looks what I mean. I don't think they've gone far enough. But again, and again, because you know, this is where being small and independent is really good, because you just do what you want to do. And for a young team to have a large group of men in suits telling them that what they're doing is wrong, it's kind of hard.
Yeah, that is the challenge. Yes.
In the second half of the session today, we will essentially, since this is a workshop, we'll look at the process of producing a graphic novel to some extent. But before we get into that, does anybody want to say anything about it, about your experiences, or ask anyone something here?
Basically, how will you crack the pricing thing? Is the niche, or I mean, it has a smaller audience, graphic novels from what I've seen. So you're not going to have the print runs that comics may have abroad. So, because as a publisher, I haven't done any graphic novels yet, but even in the adult division that is doing one, it's a huge problem because you have great art, you need good paper, you know, you need to spend money on the production, and then it becomes, you know, takes you completely out of the market in that sense, especially a new market, you know, where you're trying to get people to try and, you know, to sort of taste it. So either you continue to, I mean, how do you grow your readers also? Because there is this sort of quite cultish, you know, readership, but obviously if you're talking about doing what you're saying, you know, should happen with the younger generation or then you need to grow it, right? So, but the price it is quite formidable, you know, sometimes to buy something that's 900, and, you know, if your child is reading 10 of those in a month, it just, yeah. Even on Flipkart, it becomes an exercise, you know, in sort of budgeting.
I don't think any of the books, I mean, I'm sure I would love, they have price books at a certain range. I think the Bao book that came out is 800 rupees, but it's a big fat book, and it's, I think, meant for hardcore graphic novel fans. We've done, I mean, Hush was a quality production, it was a calling card, it was meant to be a commercial project. The new books are probably going to be around 80 to 100, mixtape is going to be 50 or 40 even. Yeah, I mean, it's not there. I'm an independent publisher where I have the room to say, okay, I'm not going to take revenues from this. It's basically, it's not going to go on bookstores. I'm going to send it to friends who give it to friends, and that's the idea of building an audience. But for young audience, see, we can't go on Pulika pricing. That won't really work. But Bone, because of the legacy it has, it can afford a 395 pricing. But I think something, it's around 200. If you can do a decent quality production in 200 in a young adult reader segment, I think you can reach.
So my point is a little slightly different. Is that, I mean, you can price it at 200 with great difficulty, but the point is to, in some way, educate people to understand that this is worth it because of, you know, the art and the, you know, and that sort of education or understanding is completely missing in our upbringing, you know, that illustration matters,
and have also been taken out of textbooks. So.
Yeah, illustration matters, and
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's so missing. I mean, I feel like there's Raj comics and there's comics in
Raj
weekly
comics is very
magazines.
low. What I mean is to pay for good art is not something you pay for text most of the time, you know. And
Right. I mean, but they're not very good.
and
Okay.
he's very right. I mean, how customers see books is like, you have 200 pages, it should cost 200 rupees, max 250. In color, it should cost maybe, you know, 1.5 rupees per page or something.
But I mean, I think, like what the literary journal was doing, we're not trying to sell that book to anybody who's just coming across comics for the first time. You know, these are for people who are a little bit into it and collectors and decided that this is what they like to spend their bucks on.
Yeah.
But
And there is like a big divide. I mean, I have very young people in my office, and they're all big comic fans, and this is huge divide between comics and graphic novels, and you know the like a comic fan, not necessarily the guy like, okay, like he just said, you know, that's DC and Marvel and not, you know what I mean? So that I think it gets self-defeating.
I like to answer the previous question also. I've been talking about pricing, right? I mean, like Rakesh is saying, we're not targeting at this point of time new readers so much. I mean, the probably lower cost one that we're trying to do would reach them. But the Obituary Journal and the POW and let's say Daily Calm, all of these books are going out to a hardcore graphic novel reader who at this time is probably a young parent. So if you target them and just them and their children, if you have a product for their children, they already know the value of a picture book or paying for illustration. And if you price it at the point at which they can afford the book for their child and it's coming from a respected brand, I think that's what we're trying to be, that we are doing quality comics in this space. We have something for your children too, or a young reader too. That I think would, initially that's how it would work out. Like I said, we can afford to be not mass also in this. About comics and graphic novels, okay, they're all just comics. I mean, that's my opinion. They're all just comics in terms of medium. The idea of calling something a graphic novel when it was invented was basically to give publishers at that point in time in 1970s, give it respectable and make it, you know, okay, it is a graphic novel. But I think they're just comics. The way I see the books are is that there are certain subjects, like, or the length of the book. Like a comic, usually in the US, it comes out monthly, most of the books. The DC comics, the Marvel comics, and they're all at 20-page installations now. So they're called floppy, so that's how it is. But the graphic novel is basically either compiled and so which is a longer body of work. This is why it's called a novel. So it's not a novella or it's not a short story. It's a larger body of work. And also the term is now, at least from both the circles of the movement, that it also tends to signify that it's meant for a more serious reader, or like if you look at Maus, which talks about Holocaust, and you don't want to, I don't know, denigrate the term by calling it comic, I think. That's what people like to say. But it's basically a marketing positioning than anything, because the medium is comics and it's just the subject matter you will deal with, I think. I mean, that's my opinion. That's what you see. So I never call Hush a graphic novel. I mean, people call it, but I say it's a comic, maybe a graphic novel, but it's not a novel. It's 17 pages. You finish in 2 minutes. It's not a graphic.
It's like it's another production line and it's
Yeah,
just not inspiring at all.
it is, absolutely.
But Campfire has done very well with that, I believe. I think they have visited classics. No?
And Campfire is apparently exporting a lot.
Yeah, their markets in France and Europe.
No, it's like Tampa is basically like a production shop for.
Yeah.
They wouldn't be surviving without. I think they would be
They've,
surviving. They're selling just in Delhi. To the US, I think they sell a lot.
In Europe also, they are a manufacturing industry who's got this, and they've got an entire production floor. But I mean, they've done Sita and Ram and all that. Earlier, I mean, I was a kid. There used to be Jacob classics. I mean, these are these very A5 size books. They're beautifully illustrated by Alex Nino, and they were like, I've read Time Traveler and Invisible Man. All of my classics come from the comics and not from the actual book. This is a pity probably, but but I love those books. But you don't see that kind of quality now in the books that they're bringing out. I mean, and yeah, if you don't do good picture books, then children won't even like to read it. But Campfire that way is doing a better job, I think.
Okay, I have a question, a very simple question. Is I'm not a big comic reader, and I hear all around me, like especially, I mean, people who read comics are very critical of other people who read comics anyway. So I've seen it specifically in comic fans. They are very, very passionate about what they like, So, so if you're looking at something like what a Campfire does with Sita or Parvati, or your books does with Robinson Crusoe or something, so how do you judge, like coming to it for the first time, is there some way to judge a good graphic novel in terms of its rendition?
Isn't it the same thing as
As
any classic being retold? When you're talking about Sita and Parvati and so on. And in terms of the artwork, I think it's really
Artwork is
subjective.
subjective, I think.
Yes.
But a lot of times I've seen in Campfire books is that you try to, or at least a lot of comics, they try to use text for exposition. And you have these big fat word balloons and it's unfortunately in Brainwave with the initial time also, you're trying to break actually a heavy subject for children, but there's so many texts and you try to put illustrations next to it, but it doesn't work. I mean, there's no sequential, like some comics read like movie storyboards. When actually in comics, if you do it well, the reader basically imagines, there's like in between two panels, there is something happening in the reader's head which he's not conscious about.
The layering, what you were talking about, for instance, in Hush.
Yeah, in Hush, I think that worked because you're giving a lot to the reader's imagination and you're not basically printing the book about and putting it, pasting it there. I
You're
think,
not illustrating the text.
yeah, you're not illustrating the text so much. You bring an interpretation to the text. Like I think when you're talking about Rumor and why it's so brilliant, is because she's not putting the text as it is. She's bringing her own imagination and what one person does in, let's say, an adaptation of Gulliver's Travels would be very different from what, let's say, how we interpret Gulliver's Travels, but still remain true to the core text that someone who's reading it knows the story and we're not embellishing it too much. I think that's the way we would do illustrated classics.
Okay, let's now move on to the second part of the thing, which is essentially about how you actually do the process of bringing out a graphic book. I'll just start again with them and then come around to you. I found, I did a book called Our Toxic World with Sage Publications, and when we did that, I found this very interesting phenomenon that they treated it exactly as they would a book with text, because it was the first time they'd done something like that, which essentially meant that we finished the entire artworks before they started reading the text, because that was the manuscript for them. Is there perhaps now more awareness in regular publishers that you need to approach this in a different way? And
I think so, and I think with children's publishers, because you do picture books where anyway before illustrations start there is a lot of conversation between the editor or the author and the artist, and also the whole thing of the difference. I don't know whether you finished it and gave it to Sage or whether it happened in lots of stages, but essentially you look at it as a fairly long, continuous involved process.
But if I may,
yeah.
I think Sage, particularly because they're like an academic publisher, maybe they came to it like this, but I think all publishers are pretty aware of that a graphic novel is not the same as as any other book that you're doing, and a lot of, as she said, it's an extended process of editing, and it's more complicated because in a way, if you edit something, then the drawing may need to change, and then it becomes like a really complex process. And in terms of production, you are always, you know that this is going to be not the same. You're not going to use the 50, 60 GSM paper, and everything in terms of its look is going to be much more, you have to be pay much more attention to the details than you
I
will.
think there's, primarily text editors, the first barrier which again, when you're in children's publishing that happens, is that the making the writer aware of the fact that here actually the visuals are telling the story. So there also has to be this continuous willingness to rework the text as the pictures are telling more and more of the story. So, which is sometimes a bit complicated.
Yeah, I mean, is there a good process for editing that people find tried and true? Because I have a problem. I mean, like you start with like a sketch storyboard when you're working, or you start with the text, or like that?
No, we start with the script. I mean, almost, there are some creators, let's say when we're doing a small picture, and if it's a illustrator who's telling the piece, and it's one single story, they think visually.
Yeah.
Like, there's this Alicia Souza, I don't know if you know, she set the brand for Chumak. She worked with Chumak for a long time before she moved out. Like, when she does pieces, she's thinking visually. She doesn't know how to write a script. But then, when I write a story, or when writers write a story, we have a script in mind. And when we did Hush, for example, I'd already done a single page story before that. And I was completely scared to do Hush because, I mean, even though I've read like tons of comics, you have no idea what pacing is. You have no idea how many panels in a page. You have no idea if it's going to work, because I'm not a very visual person. I do thumbnails, but I cannot visualize it beyond a certain point. But I did the paneling. I just wanted to learn paneling, so I did the paneling. And mine was very, like, if you look at the book, they're very rigid. They're just square panels, square panels, square panels everywhere. And but I had two friends. Like Dilip was my partner, was an editor, because I tried to have somebody else come in and see the book from outside. And also there was Archana, who was a very close friend of mine, who was an illustrator, who worked with Katha and Brainwave. So one of the pages, she just came in this page, for example, was actually a block page, and she just broke the grid. And that's the moment I realized that, as much as I know comics, there is something that the artist brings in that I can never, as a writer, match. And that understanding is required at any point in time. That in a graphic novel, like if you look at Neil Gaiman, who's a famous writer, and he's a writer, and yeah, he's probably broken that. But even I'm sure in his scripts, there is something the artist brings in which he's not visualizing, and they just bring so much to the work. And as a writer, you have probably just step back and give it to them and then see. And you're just probably guiding them slightly. Maybe some pages you're very clear, okay, this is the way you want it because it works in a certain way. But otherwise, you just let them have a free hand.
Do your scripts look like movie scripts? Is it like exterior day and all
No,
that?
no. We don't give, sometimes we give close-up shots and all that, but we do page one. Nowadays, the way I don't Hush, I was page one, panel one. So it basically, again, you're restricting the artist to think in a box. Right now, I just say page one, and good scripts, I think, they just say page one, and this is what's happening on page one. And you leave it to the artist to decide how to break it down. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work. Like recently, like one of the news stories we're doing, the artist, she did like almost like a movie storyboard paneling. So I was an editor on this. So I had to step in and because I'm talking to the writer. So as an editor, that's what you try and do. That you try and, it's difficult because art takes so much more time. Once you do an entire page and then you can't come and say, okay, change this. Because it's so much effort they put into it. As compared to writing just something.
Do you let the artist tell you like, okay, this isn't actually one page, this is 3 pages?
Yeah. You do. And like, because you're a small publisher, because you're not aware of the printing costs and all of that, like as it happened in Hush, like all that, we tend to be loose with the scripts in terms of, okay, do what's best for the story and not for the money or the printing costs and all that. We're not guided with that.
So you go like, so there's, I want to understand. So there's this script and then it goes to the artist and the artist maybe says, you need an extra page here, you need different panels here or something, and then it comes back and then there's a sketch phase? Or
what happens is you send a script to an artist and they send a breakdown. They basically do boxes, so they just do very rough scripts, like very rough scripts that you can't even understand what it is, but once you work with an artist for a period of time, you know what she's trying to do. Like Prabha sends us like, has sent me pages which I can't understand anything, but we work enough that I trust her to know what she's doing. And so you go by that. But you try and see that the storytelling is, the narrative is working, the sequential part of it is working effective, and you're leaving enough space for the reader to think and not, like sometimes if you look at some comics, they're crammed with information. They just block, and you don't want to do that, you need to let people breathe, and that might need adding pages. It's very rarely that you actually had to, like on Hush, I think I put Rajiv to entire torture because in Hush, basically the father is the main character, who is also the vice principal of the school. And we weren't able to get the character right because people they couldn't make out that it's the same person. And artists, unless you're an animator because they've gone through the regular schedule of getting, like when doing Chota Bheem in one episode or one scene, he has to look like Chota Bheem in the second scene also. He cannot look like somebody else in the second scene. So that regular comes only to animation artists. So with Rajiv, though he's an animation artist, we couldn't get that look correct. So finally, we had to give the father a goatee so that that's the father, and he's there also. So we do that, right? But it's learning, so
see, there are different models in a sense in production as well, right? When you're working with, say, a single creator who does text and visuals together, that would probably work one way. When you're working with a combination of a writer and illustrator, even there you can have like a writer who just writes a story and the illustrator then takes it and converts it into the storyboard and stuff like that. How do you approach, I mean, can you just tell us a little about different kinds of ways of doing this? How you would approach each of these?
We did a 8-page piece with Prabha and Forbes. Forbes has a graphic illustrated section, we had an 8-page piece there. So she was a sole creator on it. Prabha writes very well, but sometimes because she's thinking visually and she's putting everything in text, sometimes we need a little editing there. So you probably had to like pare it down, and at that point you put a writer's hat and you try to see how does it make sense as a script more than as a visual, because visuals will be stunning because that's how you're working with artists. But on a script, because you're working with an editor somewhere else, and they have to also be able to follow the script and see that okay, this is what's happening. With the most difficult job, I think it's like managing a rock band. Seriously, there are these artists and writers, and some artists who are very high profile have an ego. And it's in a good way, because I think it's the same as Shani was saying, that I think this is that you have to courier a cake from Delhi to this writer you're working, and that's a relationship you build, right? And they have to trust you enough to know as an editor that what you're telling is actually benefiting the story and not trying to change what they want to do in the story. So, and as manager, we've received a lot of submissions from artists who are quite sad to say atrocious at times. I mean, they just send it because you think you can draw, but it's just that, we're very small, but it's snobbery, I don't know. We try and say we have a quality that we try to maintain, and even though we don't pay, I think the page says that Laugh can pay or Harper can pay. But we try to stick to that, and we're very, hell-bent on that. But, and writers, unfortunately don't know how to write. I mean, they send us like long synopsis, and you can't make anything out of that. You have to at least try and break it into pages at least, so that the artist, other the artists will go ever, they'll make a, 8-page, what should be an 8-page story into a 20-page story. So some kind of direction we expect from the writers to come in, and we actually work for that. Sorry.
Can I just ask, since you mentioned writers don't know how to write, what would be a good synopsis depending on length, etc., specifically for graphic novels or comics?
When we look at submissions, we try and ask writers to send us basically what you have in mind. Like put into one. If you can't put into a single page, then I don't think you've got a grip on the story. I think even when you work with an editor on a publishing house, even if it's Lord of the Rings, for example, which is like a huge stone, or even if it's Game of Thrones, which is like, but you can basically make it exciting enough so that the editor doesn't have to go through reams of text and figure out, what you're trying to say. And that would actually reflect, I think, clarity in the mind that this is the themes that you're touching on, and then you probably say that, okay, this is what you want to do. In terms of the script, sorry, that's great.
No, I think you hit on something with the rock band. I think that's a really good analogy. Because I think that graphic novels needs, if the writer and artist are different people, there needs to be a deep relationship there. Like you need to be able to make music together, and I think getting a submission from an author that you're then going to go send to an artist that's never talked to the author is doomed to failure. I think that, I like to get submissions from people who have an artist that they're already working with, and they've kind of been jamming for a while, and they figured out what their sound is, and honestly, my favorite comics have always been by people where the artist and the writer are the same person. That's just, those are almost always my favorite comics. So, I don't know, this is an exception.
I think the editor's role there becomes a bit like a marriage counselor.
So actually, I haven't faced that. We haven't faced that. We work with, I think, 55 pieces of small pictures, one page thing, but we work with writers and artists who are actually separate. And one of the long-standing relationships that has been with Arjun and Prabha, and Arjun is working in Facebook and he was working in Google before that, and Prabha is the art director. They've hit a stride. They've hit that rock band. They can just, Arjun sends scripts with immense detail and immense references, and Prabha, and it's dense. I don't know how to break it down. Prabha just does magic with it. She's a rock star there. Okay, they just rock at that point. But I've had scripts which the writer and artist never met each other, and we bring them together. But there, like I'm saying, the editor becomes a very crucial role. Also, for the fact that, we were working on a story recently, a 6-page story, and the writer separate, the artist separate, the cover artist somebody else. And the cover artist did a particular cover, which, I don't know if you noticed it, but, and me as an editor, the writer, the artist, we all thought that it's revealing too much of the story. But as an editor, you need to be able to step back and see this objectively also, are you just, sometimes we get too close to the story that you know everything, and every detail on a cover seems as if you're telling the story, and then the artist gets really offended. Hello, I know this is a good cover, and this is how it has to be. So then you play marriage counselor. You try to listen to what the cover artist is talking about, his cover, why he's doing it, and then you put it across to the writers and artists, and you try and there you actually are. It's the way I've approached any book is it's win-win for everybody. I'm not trying to put the writer's story into the make force anybody to do anything, but it's if you can jam well, yeah, brilliant. But otherwise, I think if you have a good editorial process, I think it's not such a big difficulty to get two people who have different sounds to come together and groove also. I don't think it's that difficult.
It does seem like, I mean, on all fronts, there is a certain amount of kind of education that's required. I mean, whether it's writers, illustrators. I mean, not everyone is used to it. Some people are quite used to it and can do it quite well because they've been following this genre. But is that a role that you find yourself playing as well quite a bit? Of education, yeah. I mean, I like one thing about Harsh. I don't think you got it there, but they've actually got like the making of Harsh itself also in here. A little bit of how the scripts went and how the storyboards were done, some basic sketches. So it's a nice thing that way. I like that. You can actually trace back how this book was made in the book itself.
Yeah, we intend to do that in every book because if you're going to evangelize people to read comics, and you need more creators to actually create comics, which is what the anthology low-cost thing is trying to do. We provide a platform for new creators to come into comics, and we would provide support everywhere. Also, like even in the submission guidelines that we have, we haven't done it yet, but we intend to put a 5-page script which people can illustrate and give it to us. But I think after coming here and meeting Just Books, for example, that's something that we like to do. Like basically work with creators and do workshops so that you can at least tell creators what our process is. This is very different from what, let's say, Harper's process and what Bluff's process is. But our process is like this, and in that guidance, yes, we would do that. Yeah.
Okay, before we've got another 10 minutes to go, so any last questions over from you guys? Or should we go to the audience?
I think both of you had this question, and mainstream publishers like Hachette and do you think there's a lot of hype around graphic novels? Is there a lot of hype around graphic novels? Everybody's jumping on it, right? And do you think it's? I think it's a lot of hype, but I think is there meat behind the hype, or is it just hype?
I think it will translate into fresh soil.
I think because it's a sort of bigger investment in sort of time and production and everything. Everybody wants to get into it, but is just testing waters right now to see. So everybody's doing that token, couple of graphic novels to see what happens to it in the market, and there are actually particular specific editors who are, who really like the genre and so want to do that. But I think it just becomes it's experimental still, right? That the shelves are not, in that sense. So hopefully it will, kind of grow. It can only grow from here. So
I think it's also just journalist friendly. I mean, there's exciting looking art and it's fun and it makes good copy. So and it's both good in terms of you get easy publicity, and it also sort of gives you an inflated sense of importance sometimes.
Sorry.
I was going to ask, to your point, Pradeep, earlier about how we are all so obsessed with mythological related and ACK still rocks and all that. Why? I don't think anyone has an answer, but since you guys are in the space, why are we so obsessed with just that? Why are we moving beyond it?
Because present reality is too bitter.
Yeah, it is a reality.
It's not just about present reality. It could be anything. Just different things that there are books being written about so many different things, but it hasn't the visual meaning.
I've seen that with perhaps Sarnath is one slight exception. Almost all the graphic work that's coming out is dark.
Very
Dark,
yes.
dark.
What are you going to do about children?
And it does not, dark novels, regardless of graphics or not, anyway are not very, in that sense, popular or populist. I don't understand why this is happening.
Yeah, it's a little bit true even in the States, I think. There's the comics, like the superhero stuff, which is completely separate, but I see that even in like the Narayana Party there. It's a lot. It's pretty depressing. I don't know. I mean, I think manga is really different. Like Japan has there's a lot more different genres. Yeah, it's very mainstream. It's like, yeah.
Perhaps that's the reason why you shouldn't call it comic, because there's nothing comical about it.
Yeah, it's a bad name. It got stuck.
Yeah, and someone asked us when we had Comic Con, like, why is the work so dark? And that's a question I've been trying to answer for ourselves also. I mean, it's totally true. I mean, most of the work reflects a very dark tone. I don't know why it is. I think it's an entire stuck-up feeling that I think we as individuals have been like, we're trying to. It's meant to read us, so it must be dark. Hush, you know, and Hush wasn't meant to be. We didn't consciously say, okay, we'll do really dark stories. It wasn't that. And some of the present stories aren't dark. They're fun, but some of them are quite dark because we're trying to play with tones, trying to play with reader expectations, and you know, it's a series that works well with that. But the new series we're working with, which we haven't announced yet, and we're still waiting for the artist to get his, you know, full socks up and actually do it. It's actually a very fun thing. It's not dark at all. We're actually trying to be basically complete masala pop entertainer kind of thing. We're trying to do that. We're not.
Because even in the international space, I think what is happening in India is that while I'm not a big graphic novel reader or buyer, in the visual art comic space varies. The things I'm reading even now end up being Calvin or the new XYZ. Series. And I think a lot of young adults or young professionals continue to read. People love Dilbert, but we have nothing equivalent in India.
But they're not graphic novels or comics per se. They're not single form narrative. They are actually cartoon strips. It's slightly different in terms. Like Calvin, I love Calvin. Okay,
so that's how you graduate, right? You become used to.
No. Because you're seeing, if you look at cartoons, like you're doing it, like Calvin, for example, or Dilbert, it comes in a newspaper strip. It comes on a daily installment. It's not building story across, and very rare it has built story. Comic, on the other hand, is a self-contained.
I get what you're saying. What I'm saying is that, for instance, when I was little, I used to read Amar Chakravarti. When I grew up a little bit, then graduated to superheroes, this, that, etc. Now, if I want to pick up something that's just fun, light, easy to read, except for Calvin, there is nothing.
We don't have strips in this country, actually. That never occurred to me before. There's no culture of comic strips. That's weird.
But there are actually a lot of fun books. If you read Embroideries by Marja and
Astrid, when I finished reading in the
I want to add something. It's an ACK rock. But what else will rock? What else is there for children?
So I was actually going to ask questions to Shobha and you.
It's a different experience.
But I don't want the same experience in different form.
Modesty blazing, Trip Kirby.
Sorry.
Modesty blazing, Trip Kirby.
No, I think there are enough comics which are in the fun space too. Not everything is dark, but in India probably yes, but abroad I don't think all of them. See, Embroideries, for example, it's a total laugh ride.
I agree with you. What I'm saying is, I'm surprised that there is.
In here, yes, probably. Yeah, there is. I mean, we're going to try and change some of that at least. So is it okay to step into that area and do so?
I think we should give them a little fun element wherever they can. Don't make reading so serious. That's the biggest thing, you know. Reading has to come out of its both and be just sheer fun for kids.
But there might be one element which Dhuvank was talking about yesterday about a particular brand conveying a certain feeling. So if you have one character, then the character flows through multiple comics and therefore helps to make it.
You're in TV shows.
But I think it's something that perhaps is going to happen. I mean, there is now groups like called the Power Collective, Manta Ray. There are people who are actually getting more and more into doing comics in various parts of India. So we will probably end up seeing more of this over time. We might even see strips and in fact that's something I'd like to actually ask back to you, that as a writer, would you write for something like that? Is that one of the reasons maybe it's not happening is because writers is not seeing that as something that they like to do?
Comics.
Yeah.
I'd be open to it. It's just that you feel a little handicapped if you can't draw. As a writer, I'm in complete control of what I'm trying to do, and I know I can get it done that much faster if I'm working on my own.
Right.
With this, firstly I'm writing a script. It's sort of somewhere between writing a novel and writing for film, for instance, or writing for the stage. So your level of dependency goes up, and I think a lot of writers are, a little bit resistant to that. But if I could draw, I would totally do it.
So maybe, I mean, that could explain one, I mean, that could be one of the explanations to why we don't see more comics, because writers are not writing them, and there are only that many, maybe artists who are full storytellers. I felt that writers tend to be a little resistant to this because they want to stay, like you're saying, in control of their text.
You also split royalties.
Okay.
You also split royalties.
There isn't much royalty to go around in that kind of writing in any case, but
it's like you need to find that one other person who understands you so completely, and where to find such.
no, I think it's a trial and error process for that. I mean, see, it's anything you do, right? I mean, all of us are looking at it from the point of view that right now, but I mean, this is one example that I try to see it. For example, you're very small, but if 10 years later, or let's say Parody, or let's say what Swati is doing, or any enterprise, you build it over time. And I'm sure that when you start out, if you have a good editor, if you're working with a good publisher who understands the medium well, they will try and match you with an artist who actually can take your style. That's how I think a lot of editors work. We try and match you with somebody who we think can do justice to the writing that you're doing. But there are shortcomings there also. But like, for example, Blast has worked with so many different artists, and we work with so many different artists. So when if you want to give a script, it's like, then the first one might be a miss, the second might be a miss, but there are enough artists with whom you would gel. But the thing about comics is, as a writer, you have to be open to the fact that you have a particular visual idea of the script, but the artist is coming from an entirely different visual point of view, and you try and reach a middle ground, which is not a compromise. Actually, it's like a marriage, like Stanley was saying. I mean, it is that, and if you hit that, and if you trust your artist in a certain way, I think things actually go well. And then, but it takes a little. It's like any collaboration. I think that's the part I think writers can't do sometimes, because you're not used to, especially if you're a prose writer. It's difficult to collaborate. I mean, my editor is there, but I have a very strong vision of my story. But that,
it's also temperamental too.
Yeah.
Writers by temperament are not very collaborative.
I want to make another music analogy. I used to be like really into American punk and British punk and this like The Clash and the Sex Pistols and all these bands that would do like really dirty sounding 3-chord songs, and we have no technical skill at all, but it's still awesome. And I found that like there's very few people in India who like that stuff. Like all the Indian rock fans I know are really into like the guitarists who can just shred and play scales really, really fast and have like a lot of technical dexterity. And I think that is there's a similarity in the way people look at art and comic art. Like I see a lot of people sort of like, I think Sarnath is amazing, but I feel a lot of people have told me like they don't think like Sarnath Banerjee's art is like very technically good. And I'm like, wow, a lot of the comics that I really like are like they're really doodles, like they're really simple art. I mean even Dilbert is like it's almost nothing. There's not, you could probably draw that well, and like these days like. There are people making comics where you don't even draw, you make, just use clip art. Like there's this guy, David Rees, who had a brilliant political cartoon called Get Your War On, which was just slamming the Iraq war throughout the whole thing. It's a really great cartoon. He didn't draw anything. Everything is public domain clip art with little thought movings on it. And it was like nationally syndicated, it was huge. So that, you don't have to draw. Don't worry about being able to draw. Just leave it that alone.
XKCD, you can certainly draw that. Yeah.
So, can any story be told as a graphic novel? Or, like Shani spoke about how Jerry's whatever story came in and you felt it was not a picture book but a graphic novel. So if I want to come from a place where I would like to do more graphic novels, say, okay. Can any manuscript that comes to me, you think, can be presented as a graphic novel, or is there some way to figure out that it would work better as a graphic novel and not as a straight text novel or story? Or
I don't think any can be a graphic novel. I think
what are the things that you're looking for? That spark off that thing that this is going to be good.
That's a little difficult, I think. Like I was saying, see, there's a Twilight adaptation in comics, and I think it's totally pointless. I mean, I'm sorry it's yours, but it's totally pointless. I mean, you have a brilliant series, which I didn't like because I'm not that age group and all. My niece is crazy about the books. No. I mean, I love Harry Potter. I'm saying I love Harry Potter, but but whatever reason. But I'm saying, like Harry Potter, for example. Actually, you should read the other book called Love Like a Sunset, the girl with the red hair. That's actually a riff on, but it's not. It is that, but it's not that also. But I'm just saying, why would you make, for example, Harry Potter a comic? There's so much in the mind just imagining all of that, right? And there's some books I think, especially as editors, which I'm not done processing about, but there are some books I think or stories which work so much in the mind that you have to visualize, and each reader actually visualizes in a completely different way certain scenes. But like I'm sure a lot of people imagine Hogsmeade as a completely different thing. They have different interpretations.
They made a movie out of it.
And you kill it. Yeah, and you kill it actually. That's what you kill it. Like Lord of the Rings, I imagine the Hogs in some other way, and I wish I could just go back and not erase all of that, but you can't. But certain scripts, like really, I think that comes from the writer. If the writer has seen it as a picture book, probably in the case Jerry, he did a short story. So I think the very rare stories that actually, if the writer has unconsciously and not written with a particular intent of it being a particular medium, I think the very few stories that actually can do it. Because that's what happens when you do literary classics in a bad way. That's not how it is meant to be. But the ones that I was talking about, I read, they understood the medium and they just take the essence of it and they break it down. So, but I don't think any manuscript can be done. I don't think there's a process that you formula which makes it work.
Where he said the movie killed the comic, the book, where I attended a small workshop with kids where the author, it's a comic book workshop, the author asked the children sitting there, so why are books important? What do you think is the importance of books in your life? His hand shot up immediately. He says, yes, otherwise we wouldn't have movies.
Okay, sorry.
I just have a question, and
yeah, we probably have to make this the last one. We are a little overshot. So.
And because I am not at all a graphic novel reader, or even less a comic reader, I'm just looking at Hush, and if it is something that you have designed for an adult age group, I mean, I'm looking at it and I'm seeing the brilliant text that can be written around it, and I don't want these visuals to interfere with how I would imagine it. And I'm thinking, why would you do that to an adult? It's okay to give it to a child, probably. Sorry?
Are you talking to me about?
Yeah, no, I mean,
you can do text version.
No,
Hush and words.
Yeah, hush and words, yeah.
No, I wouldn't ever do that as a story. I think that story meant, we had very clearly figured that we won't put dialogues in it.
When I'm looking at the pictures, I'm impatient for the text. I want the words, and I'm thinking that it's such a great story, and I probably...
Could you maybe open it out into Creative Commons and let her write?
Let us all write the text.
No, see, but there's something that I think... The idea behind doing a book like Hush, in which you deal with child abuse, and you don't want to talk to people about child abuse.
You want everyone to shut up.
I think what we did with the book was that we wanted to, the very reason there are no words, in certain places, like if you sit to the book and you can't figure out the timeline initially, but we used blacks in backgrounds and the style change where you're doing a flashback, and I was under thinking that we should give a caption saying that it happened earlier, and Rajiv said no, we just make the book work visually, and I think that was the approach for the book. if I had to make it a prose thing, it would be like one step away. And there is nothing new about the story. There is nothing new about the story. It's a story of child abuse. It's happened so many times. It'll happen till we all there.
Make a little language.
There are trailers actually that we did for the book and promotion. Yeah, I mean, it would, yeah. That's possible.
Right.
But you lose the learning there. You lose the comeback.
Yeah,
You lose the comeback because then will be all the time.
Yeah, so I think we're out of time here. So thanks, Rani, thanks, Rakesh, thank you, Pratik, and thank you everyone for coming.